trying to make things as easy as possible for a man. And so what this looks like is doing things for him, or making it really easy to meet up with you, or planning things out for him so that he doesn't have to do those things, and going out of your way to make things as easy as humanly possible for a guy. Is there anything else you wanted to say about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course you want to, relationship, you're working together and everything. So this isn't about, making a man do everything and coming from this place of entitlement or anything like that. But in general, if you are rearranging your schedule to see him because he's the guy you really like, right? And so you have plans, but he's only available last minute. And so you kind of drop your plans with your girlfriends or your family to like run over and see him. If you're always the one driving to him, paying for everything every single time, planning the dates, and basically all he has to do is show up. I know you talk about this a lot, Matt. Men are happy to just show up and take whatever you have to give. Some men will just take everything you got, but that doesn't mean that he's investing in the relationship the same way you're investing, right? So he needs to be putting that effort into. I know you have so many great things to say about that. I would love to hear any insights. I know you could talk forever about this.
I could talk forever about this one. Yeah, it's one of those things where you start doing stuff like that, and one of the things that one of the reasons why a man will be in a relationship, even if it's not like an actual relationship, if it's just a casual situationship or any of that kind of stuff, one of the reasons why he will be in that is purely for convenience, right? And so what happens is a lot of times there's red flags, right? And we talk about some of these red flags that you should be watching out for, and what that's supposed to look like, and how a man is supposed to behave if he's actually really interested in you. And you're going to end up missing all of those red flags if you're the one that's doing everything, right? So if you're doing everything, you're missing out on the fact that he's not even that interested. And so what's going to end up happening is you're going to be doing all these things and you're investing. And there's something out there called the sunken cost, right? It's called the sunken cost principle. And what it means is that the more invested somebody is in something, the more they feel like they don't want to let go of it, right? And so there's a lot of different examples that you can use of this. One that I use is usually of a car, right? I used to have this Jeep, and it wasn't even that great of a Jeep. I mean, I bought it, and it like was falling apart all the time. And at one point it was like, I either had to junk it or I had to spend like $10,000 to fix it. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And so I was like, you know what? The idea of going out there and buying another car was like, just to me was like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put some money into it. And after I put that money into it, it was like the car kept breaking down, right? And just getting worse and worse and worse. But I was like, but I put so much money into this. I've spent more money on it, fixing it than the amount of money that I spent buying it and all that kind of stuff. And what ended up happening was I was like, it was one of those things where I was like, I don't want to get rid of this because I've invested myself so much into it, right? And that's what happens with us in relationships or anything that we do. It's a really common thing in investment strategy, right? So people will spend money on a stock, right? And they do a bunch of research on it, and they know that this is the perfect stock, but the stock is going down, 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 down. But they're like, no, I've done the research. I know this is the greatest stock. I've, spent so much time and energy and whatever in researching this stock. I know it's the right one, but it just keeps going down and down and down and down. And they end up losing everything on it, right? And they're like, confused and baffled. And a whole bunch of psychologists were like, why does this happen? Right. And so they looked at it and they found it's from the sunken cost principle, right? They get so invested in this thing that they don't want to let go of it. They know that at a certain point they're supposed to sell. Right. And they know, at different points they're supposed to buy and sell things, but it hits that point and they just hold on because they've spent so much time and energy and effort and emotion and all these things into that stock. Well, you want to be like that stock, right? You want him to invest his time and energy and emotion and all of those different things into you, because that proves and that shows that he really values you. And there's a whole bunch of different principles, psychological principles that go behind this, right? I love psychology. It's literally one of my most favorite topics in the entire world. But the other thing that's there is this commitment and consistency thing, right? If somebody spends time, that's why it's so important what frames are around the relationship, because the longer somebody spends doing something in a relationship, the more they feel like that's the normal, and they feel like that's something they're expected to do, and that's something that they will do, and the less time they spend doing those kinds of things, the less they feel that that's expected, and the less likely they are to start doing those things. And so you want a guy to start doing those things from the very beginning, because if he's investing in you and he's doing all these things in you, your value raises in his eyes, because he's put so much into you. He feels like he's invested in you, so he doesn't want to let you go. He's been doing this thing over and over and over again. The principle for that is called commitment and consistency. It's a principle from Dr. Robert Cialdini from Arizona State University. And what happens is he continues to do it, and he sees you as this valuable and amazing woman that he wants to have in his life forever. And so it's very important that, if you're doing those things, right? One, you're going to be the one that feels that way towards him, which there's nothing wrong with, right? Like sometimes we'll get women on our channels and they'll be like, I feel like with all these rules that you guys have, I have to walk on eggshells. And it's not extreme, right? We're not talking about extremes here. We're not talking about you have to do it this way every time, and you should never invest in him, and you should never go into convincing mode, and you should never show neediness, never show weakness, right? Like we're not saying that at all, right? Like we're all human beings, and it's normal to have different things. But if you spend a lot of time trying to make things easy for him and trying to convince him and doing everything for him and all that kind of stuff, then what ends up happening is you end up being incredibly invested in him. He's not invested in you. You're missing red flags. The frame and precedence around the relationship is totally different than what you want it to be. And your value goes down in his eyes, and you're wondering what's going on. Right. And so what Helena teaches specifically in the program that's linked to in this video is all about how to make sure that you're setting things up the right way so that he's investing in you. He's, moving towards you. He's showing whether there are red flags there or not. And you're making sure that there's a communication around the relationship. There's the frame around the relationship that's going in the direction of the type of relationship that you ultimately want to have, where he values you, he thinks you're amazing, he thinks you're awesome, and all that kind of stuff. I feel like I went off on a rant there.
Amazing. No, I am so glad you said that it's not about walking on eggshells and never making a mistake. It's like nothing we say is like super black and white, right?